Hey all, today we're going to talk a little bit more about segments in the coordinate plane, and this time we're going to talk about the finding one of the endpoints of a segment if you know an endpoint and the midpoint. So we had a midpoint formula that I gave you in the last lesson, and we're going to use that same formula to find an endpoint. So today we're going to be given one endpoint, x1, y1, and then we're also going to be given the midpoint xm, ym, and we're looking for the other endpoint x2, y2. So we're still going to use these two equations to find x2 and y2. We're going to plug in the information we know, solve for x2, solve for y2, and then we'll end up with an endpoint. So again, we're going to have our answer is in parentheses an x and a y. So let's try one. Given the midpoint M of segment EF, and I'm told M is 7, 5, so that's my XM, YM. And I'm given one of the endpoints F, so that's my X1, Y1. And we're looking for the coordinates of E, and that'll be my X2, Y2. So just like we did before, my XM goes in here, my YM goes over here, X1 goes there, and y1 goes there. And then we're going to have to solve these two equations for y. And that's why we practiced equations like this before, so that hopefully this will be pretty easy for you. So we'll solve for x2 first. We plug in xm and x1. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this fraction, remember. So I'm just showing that step. And these 2's on the right cancel, and we're left with just x2 plus 2 on the right. And then I could subtract 2 from both sides, and I find out that the x-coordinate of the endpoint we're looking for is 12. So I do the same for y. I know the midpoint y, I know y1. I'm solving for y2. I'm going to have to multiply both sides by 2. We'll cancel those 2's. This is what I'm left with. So 2 times 5 gives me 10. I have just what's on top, remember, and now I just need to add 4 to both sides. So I have an x value, I have a y value, x2 and y2. I'm going to go back up here and plug them in, and that is my endpoint E of segment EF if M, the midpoint, is 7, 5. So let's try another one. Again, I'm given the midpoint M, this time of segment CD, and I have endpoint D, and I'm looking for the endpoints coordinates for C. So there's my midpoint XM, and I have that written as well. And I have my X1, Y1. So my XM goes in yellow, my YM in green. That's my X1, and then my Y1. So we're just going to plug those values in where they belong and solve for X2 and Y2. Plug in an XM and X1. Be careful here. I'll plug in parentheses because this is a plus here, and my X1 is a negative number. Multiply both sides by 2. You notice here this plus minus just became a minus. I simplified that situation. Make sure this negative stays with the 2. Gives me negative 4 on this side. X2 minus 5. So I'm just going to add 5 to both sides. Oops. Sorry about that. As I was saying, I'm going to add 5 to both sides and get that X2 as 1. Same thing for Y. I'll plug in the value of the midpoint, the value of Y1. I'll multiply by 2 on both sides. And then I just need to subtract 7 and get that y2 is negative 5. So these aren't my answers. I got to put them together, write them like a point. So my endpoint, the coordinates for point C are 1, negative 5. So go ahead and pause the video here. M again is the midpoint, this time of segment AB. I've given you the coordinates of M and B, and I want you to find the coordinates for A. So I have my X, M, Y, M, and I have my X1, Y1. So I just need to plug in. XM goes here, YM here. And remember, it's always a good idea to write the equations down every time you do them. You do a problem. There's my X1, my Y1. If you write these equations down every time, by the time you get to a quiz, and I don't give you the equations for the quiz, you'll have them memorized. So let's plug the numbers in. Again, I put my negative 3 in parentheses, and then I simplify the plus minus right here. And I got x2 to be 11. My negative 5 is in parentheses, and I'm going to simplify the plus minus in this step to just be minus, multiplying by 2, adding 5 to both sides. Y2 is negative 13. So again, last but not least, I got to put these into coordinates, and those are the coordinates of my endpoint A. So that's it for this lesson. I have one UDO for you to submit in the link below. M is the midpoint of segment RS. I've given you the midpoint. I've given you the endpoint S. I just need you to find the coordinates for R. Make sure when you give me your answer, you put them in parentheses so they look like the points I have in my video.